My dream would be that meditation type practices could actually be taught in schools because I think it could be enormously helpful and enhance learning.
Identify your general why. Why do you want that? Because you want to be more loving, you want to just be more giving, more uplifting. Welcome, I'm Yannick, your host, and now joining me, McTighe, to discuss advanced age learning, living, and flourishing. Welcome back, McTighe, to the show. It's your second time, and it's a true blessing to really be able again to converse with you.
Happy to be with you again, Yannick.
So let's start, and let's just start defining learning. That's a term that gets thrown thrown around a lot of times, but we are not very clear about what we actually mean. So let's start with, what do you understand by learning, and then we can go to advanced age learning, living, and flourishing, which is such a pertinent and important topic.
Well, at a very basic level, for me, learning involves the actions, both mental and physical, that result in knowledge and action. Things that we know, things that we understand, and especially things that we can do. But to go a little more nuanced, there are four dimensions of learning that I think are relevant. One is just knowing, as in knowledge, knowledge of facts. I know the capital cities of major countries would be an example. And there are many facts on a variety of topics, of course. Then there's procedural knowledge that references skills and processes. So everything from, my wife is an art teacher, so being able to draw from observation is a skill that is developed. Or a process like argumentation. How do you build and support an argument? So there's declarative knowledge of facts, there's procedural knowledge, skills. There are what I like to describe as conceptual understandings. So an understanding is more than a fact, and it's not just a skill. Example of a conceptual understanding would be, for instance, in driving, the concept of defensive driving. That's an understanding that when you're driving a car, particularly in a city, it's not just about you. You might be safe and attentive, but you're sharing the road with other drivers, some of whom will do dangerous or unexpected things. Uh, and so you need to be ever on the defense, on looking out all around you. That's a conceptual idea. Again, it's more than a fact. It relates to skills, but it's not a skill. Another example is the idea that correlation does not ensure causality. Someone could memorize that phrase, but not understand what it means. Here's a quick example of that one. My granddaughter, who is 5, grew 4 inches last year. During the same time period last year, the U.S. economy grew and the stock market in the U.S. is now at record highs. You could argue that those two things are correlated, but they're not causal. If they were, we could watch the stock market continue to grow as my granddaughter grows. And finally, there's a category that we might call dispositional or habits of mind. Example would be the degree to which someone is curious or open-minded, or the extent to which they are able and willing to persevere when learning gets tough. They don't give up, in other words. So to summarize, when we think about learning, we have these dimensions. There's factual knowledge, their skills, their conceptual understandings, and their dispositions or habits of mind. All of them work together. They're interrelated, but they're not identical. So, to summarize, when we're talking about learning, we need to consider each of those dimensions.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for really bring this so nicely to light. These different ways of learning. That is really, really helpful. And now it really begs the question of why ought we to keep learning in an advanced age? In other words, you are a true learner. You are a learner basically of life, because I can really tell you're all the time very curious. You ask questions, and you also don't mind to actually converse with myself, who is much younger than yourself and doesn't have, you know, the wisdom that you have, for example. So you might be very bored, but still you come on the show and we have somehow a conversation. So I really appreciate that. So tell us, to really give a great example, because you're a living example, you know, why ought we to keep learning throughout life, generally speaking? And then we go really more into the specifics, how you actually do it.
Okay, I'm happy to comment on that. First of all, in terms of age, by the time this podcast is released, I'll be 75. So that gives listeners a perspective. So why should one keep learning at an advanced age? Well, one interesting known, something that we know now, was something that I remember reading about some years ago. Even I believe it was in the late 70s. There was a neuroscientist by the name of Dr. Marion Diamond who was studying rats and brains of rats. And one of her seminal findings was when rats, and especially older rats, chronologically older, were put in what she would describe as enriched environments with a lot of stimulation, their brains actually grew, that neural networks expanded, even at a late age. Um, and that recognition that the mind or the brain, will say, is extraordinarily adaptable throughout one's life, and that even in older age, one can still learn, and there are literally physiological effects that the brain continues to grow, neural networks expand. The technical term is neuroplasticity, and it describes the brain's capacity throughout life to continue to grow. But for me, I'm of the use it or lose it school of philosophy. That is, growth only comes when you're using your brain. And that means encountering new things, tackling new problems, exploring new opportunities, questioning things, even things you thought you believed. Um, and those are the stimulations that cause the brain to continue to grow. Um, the concept of growth also, I think, applies to the body and physically. And while there is admittedly predictable declines, both in physical and mental ability as one gets older, it seems to me that those negatives can be offset by, in the case of physical world, a physical life, exercise and remaining physically active. I'll give you a very particular example from myself. Now, certainly, I don't have the same stamina, endurance that I had when I was younger, and I'm stiffer. I'm not as flexible. I have to do stretching exercises just to kind of get out of bed in the morning. But in terms of strength, I've actually set personal records in strength in my 70s. And a particular example was when I was 72, I did 25 pull ups. And I have a video to prove that, in fact. Um, and my previous record was 24 when I was 20 years of age and a collegiate swimmer. And I attribute that capacity to being regular about exercise and kind of challenging myself to say, hey, I did 16 pull-ups when I was 65. What if I could do 60, 26 or 27 next year? And that's what I did. So that's a long way of saying use it or lose it. You don't have to keep learning at an advanced age, but you can. I think you should. And there are physical and mental benefits to doing so. Now, let's think about the flip side. What about people that don't continue learning? I imagine you have friends your age, and I know people 30 years younger than me that kind of stagnant. They don't seem to be curious. They don't read. They don't try to learn anything new. And in some cases, and often, they're physically inactive. They're overweight and they have health problems as a result. So, at a basic level, learning and staying active keeps you young, so to speak, makes your life more enjoyable, and I believe serves your health. Finally, I'll end my response here with learning new things is fun. It's not always easy, but it's interesting and it gives you a reason to get up in the morning. You have a goal and you can see your progress if you work at it. So that to me are some of the reasons why learning at an advanced stage is recommended, doable, and has tangible physical and mental benefits.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I can really testify when it comes to your health and your sharpness and just your overall way of being and interacting, with myself, for example. So I really appreciate that. You're really like you might be in your chronological age 75, but at the soul or spirit level, you are clearly, in my view, actually getting younger. It's almost like they were. So that is really beautiful. And I
I'm a
always ask
teenager
myself
in my mind.
exactly. No, really. And I think that's always one of the critique I have in general when it comes to our culture, that a lot of um, experience, a lot of elder people are not really consulted by younger people or the same age for advice and how you have done this and how I ought to approach it. I think there is so much potential out there that we can ultimately use in order to make ourselves, but also our communities and really the world a better place, because you have lived through so many challenges and you have overcome it successfully. And why should we not actually have the humility to actually go to you and ask you of advice? And that's why I'm so grateful to you that you actually spend a couple of hours here and actually talk about learning in your life, so this can really be disseminated and we can get something out of your experience and especially wisdom that you have. So that is wonderful. Now my question is, like, how do you learn now at this advanced age, and how has it changed over the course of your life?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to add a little bit to my last answer, just one other thought, and it has to do with something I've observed over the years in people and myself as well. I think as you age, there's a tendency to lean into the things that you are good at, the things that you are accomplished in and competent in, and to kind of distance yourself from those things that you're not. And that's not surprising. We're, if we're good at chess, we're going to want to play chess more. But if we don't do well in that particular game, we're less likely to want to continue with it. Um, and you can think about it in all facets of life. Um, and your competence in whatever things you're strong in or confident in often then gets tied to your ego. So you're known for certain things. Known in my profession for my work on curriculum. I'm accomplished in that, but I'm not a statistician. I'm not known for my work in statistics, and I don't really spend a lot of time with statistics. But I mention that to say that as we age, it's very tempting to just remain in your comfort zone, to only focus on those things in which you're already competent, and minimize or just stay away from those that you're not. However, when you are confronting learning something new, almost by definition, you've got to drop back and you're going to be a novice. You're not going to be an expert right away if it's brand new. Your word humility is a good one here, because I think learning something new requires a humility, requires you to put your ego on the side and say, I may be competent in all these things in my life, but I'm not confident yet in this. But I'm going to work at it and try to get better. And I'm not going to dismiss it because I'm not already good. Um, and I'm not going to let my learning, impact my ego. Like, I'm not good at this, therefore I'm not a good person. No, you got to separate ego from your attempts to learn and get better. So I just wanted to make that point. Now, in terms of my own life, I think I mentioned to you that I have learned and developed a great love for the game of pickleball. And so I'll use that as an illustration of my learning at an advanced age, if I can tell my story. So I have a good friend who is a very good pickleball player. And probably 5 or 6 years ago, he started playing the game. He was a former tennis player. And he said, "Oh, Jay, this is really a fun game. It's really getting a lot of attention now in the US and elsewhere. And you would really like it. Why don't you come out with me sometime?" Well, 6 years ago, I was traveling a tremendous amount for my work. And I literally just didn't have much time. When I was home, I just wanted to be home and be with my wife and do the things you have to do around the house. Plus, I was traveling so much that I didn't think I could ever spend the time to learn something new. So I just never took him up on it. Then COVID hit, right? And all the travel stopped and my work slowed down considerably. And most of my work was now doing podcasts and webinars virtually. So now I had time in my life for a first time in decades. So I thought, yeah, well, maybe I'll try this. So roughly at age of 72, I went to play pickleball for the first time. And pickleball, if you don't already know it, is an interesting game. It's really easy to pick up. You can be literally playing and playing a game, if you have any coordination at all, in an hour or two. It's a social game because it's played in doubles for the most part. So you're playing with three other people. And I did like it. I loved it right away. I thought, this is cool. And because I had more time, I said, well, I want to learn this. So I remember my wife and I signed up for a beginner class, which is important in learning. You want to have some guidance. And so we had a good instructor and he gave us the basics. And then we started playing a couple of times a week. And I was feeling pretty good because I was playing with other novices. And then my first time I played with more experienced players, I went, oh, there's a whole another level to this game that I didn't realize. And like learning anything complex, you can get in at the basic level, but then you realize there's more sophistication. But because I liked the game, because I wanted to get better at it, I took an advanced beginner course, an intermediate course. I started signing up for regular play times. So I had a lot of opportunities to play, and I got better. But knowing what I knew about learning, I recognized there's knowledge I needed, like the rules of the game and scoring. And I learned that. There are a lot of skills in the game, and I'm still working on skills, but I've gotten better. But on the skill side, I bought a book, The Art of Pickleball. I started finding YouTube videos because, as you know, you can find YouTube tutorials on anything. So you can learn online or use online resources. So I was watching videos on serving and returns and dinks and drop shots. That helped me. And then when went to play, I would watch better players and try to see what they were doing. Then I got into the understandings of the game, which developed a little bit later. Understanding the importance of deep serve and return, understanding partner play. It's a whole set of strategies that are more than just individual skills. Anyway, so I progressed. Couple last points on this. A friend of mine recently recommended a book to me called The Inner Game of Tennis. And I remember that book because it was first published, I think, in the 1970s. And I remember reading a review of it, and I thought it was kind of interesting because it was kind of Zen like, applying Zen to tennis. But I wasn't a tennis player, so I never really actually read the book. But he recommended it. He said, even though it says tennis in the title, it's perfect for pickleball. So I read it. It was really interesting because it addressed the mental part of the game. And here's some things I learned from it. And by the way, these extend, I think, to any kind of learning. Among its many points were you want to be able to focus your attention, in this case, when you're playing pickleball. You might say it's mindfulness applied to this game. Even techniques like literally watch the ball as it's going off your paddle or coming across the net and watch the holes in the ball as they're traveling. That will get your mind focused on the ball and not what's happening around you or what you have to do after the game. So, mental focus. Another big idea was relax. And that really helped me because when I was in the middle of a game, particularly if it's a close match, I would get tense and I would be holding my racket real tight. And this said, no, no, you've got to relax. Relax your mind, focus, get rid of all the distractions, but also relax your muscles. So loosen the grip. Don't let your forehand be so tight. And it actually improved my control. A third and really important tip in the book was get out of your own head. Don't let the critical and analytic voices talk to you in a negative way. Or in other words, get rid of negative self-talk because that was something that plagued me. I would hit a bad shot out of bounds and I'd just say to myself, "What are you doing? You know better. You did that in practice. What's going on?" Or I'd miss a serve and I'd beat myself up. And the book reminded me that's not productive. In fact, that will exacerbate your mistakes as opposed to kind of staying neutral, observing what happened and trying to learn from it. What did I do that made the serve go out? And so staying positive. So I mentioned that because it's something that I've experienced and appreciated, but I think it transcends pickleball to almost all learning. Whether it's a child or an adult, we sometimes burden ourselves with negative talk. My wife is an art teacher, would tell me about students who would come into her art class and say, I can't draw. Nobody in my family is artistic. This is stupid. I'm not even going to try. They had that negative attitude that literally blocked learning. So, anyway, that's been relevant in my learning. So, learning rules, knowledge, working on skills, and I continue to do so, better understanding strategy, and trying to work on the mental game are all parts of something I'm enjoying very much, which is learning pickleball. The last couple of points I'll make, um, there comes a point in time where you want to test your learning, right? And one of the ways I do it is when I play games, but also there are tournaments that are offered in my area and even nationally. And so in Maryland, where I live, there's something called Senior Olympics. And this is where older people, I think 50 or 60 and over, can sign up for and compete in various sports. So pickleball was offered. So a friend of mine and I, he was 70 and I was 74. Well, he was 70, I was 73 at the time. We signed up for 70 and over men's doubles. And we thought we're playing pretty well. We'll do fine. We can run with these old people. Well, in the first tournament, we didn't win a single game. And it was pretty discouraging, but it was also eye-opening because we saw better players. So between that first year and last year, we said, we're going to enter this again, but we're going to practice together. We're going to work on it. We're going to get better as a team. And so this past spring, we entered again, 70 to 75 age group, and we won 4 out of 6 matches, got third place, which qualified us for senior nationals. So I mentioned that only to say learning something new is not easy, but you do get better if you work at it. And in fact, there are some tangible benefits that we saw um, played out during the tournaments. So that may have been more than you wanted to hear, but that's a story of some recent learning of mine.
No, I love that. It's just, again, you illustrate really your openness that you have to learning, right? And really be able to noticing new things and actively noticing new things. Because research shows that when we are focused, when we have goal, we really invested in things, it makes us feel simply better, right? That exhausts our, brain, with certain chemicals and so on, or balance, right? And so it really shows how important it actually is to lead a healthy, happy, and successful life. And I think you're just a great example. So that, with your wife, just how everything plays out, how happy other. That is just beautiful. And so now, how do you deal with stress at the advanced stage? Does your commitment to learn help you? And if how does it help you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, One of the advantages of advanced age, not a whole lot, but one of the advantages is I can just say in my life, I have overall less stress than I had for much of my life. Because right now at my age, I'm working part time. I've really cut back my travels, which travel, it's fun for a vacation, but for work, it's not fun. It's stressful. I don't have to commute anymore. I work out of my house. My kids are grown, so I don't have the stress of raising children. We have 4 grandchildren who live in the area, but they're not stressful. They're joyful. We love having them over for a sleepover or for an afternoon. The difference is my mantra for grandchildren is you love them, you spoil them, and you give them back. And so, even though it can be stressful because they're high energy, but it's not the same kind of stress as raising your own children. And then, I've worked very hard in my life and my career, but I'm fortunate that I'm, financially secure. So I don't have to stress over finance, over money. Now, so having said all that, um, I had many, many times during my life and career that was highly stressful. And I was, even in my younger ages, even when I was in my 20s, I literally studied about stress and learned about um, the negative effects of stress on the body and on one's health. And I remember reading a book by Dr. Herbert Benson called The Relaxation Response. Herbert Benson was um, a physician researcher at Harvard, and he studied uh, Buddhist monks and meditators, Zen Buddhist meditators, and found that these people had physiologically measurable reductions in some of the indicators of stress, cortisol levels in the bloodstream, et cetera. He had a whole series of studies, and I was intrigued by this. So I'm going to come to your question now with that set up. Early in my life, because I was in stressful jobs and otherwise had stressful circumstances, and because I had read this research and was interested in ameliorating stress, I learned to meditate. I have been meditating now more than 50 years. And I mean, literally almost every day, twice a day. It's just what I do. And so meditation has been one of the key things that I've used to manage stress throughout my life. And I continue to this day. And I'll say more about meditation and mindfulness in a moment, if you will. But the short version, my experience has been meditation shuts down all the noise in the mind and it has a relaxing effect, not only mentally, but physically. I physically feel relaxed when I'm done meditating. So that's the one thing I've used to manage stress. But the other thing I've used to manage stress throughout my life is exercise. I mentioned I was a college swimmer. I love basketball and I played through my mid 40s. Um, and then I was a runner. And up through age 72, I was running, swimming, lifting weights. And then I found pickleball. So now I'm not running, I'm just running around playing pickleball, but I still lift weights and swim from time to time. So here's the relationship that I see. Meditation kind of relaxes the mind and has a concomitant effect on relaxing the body and reducing the impact of stress. Exercise relaxes the body, but has a concomitant effect on the mind. So the two together for me have been literally my lifelong mechanisms for managing stress. And I can tell you, without sounding dramatic, that other than my family and I guess my life's work, meditation has been this maybe the third most important thing in my life. In fact, if I had to give up exercise over meditation, I would do it versus the other way around. That's how impactful it has been. So that's a long answer to your good question. How do I manage stress? Those are the
So,
main ways.
there's so many follow-up questions that I have. Just quickly. So you will basically give up physical exercise if you would have to exchange it potentially with meditation, right? Or it's
If
the
I
other
had to
way.
choose between the two, which I thankfully, if I had to choose, I would sadly give up exercise. I would not give up the meditation practice. It is so not only ingrained in my daily life, but it is so beneficial to my life. And some people have said, well, how do you have time? You're a busy guy. How do you have time to meditate 20 to 30 minutes twice a day? And my answer is, well, how do you have time to brush your teeth or take a shower? It's like so fundamental. You just do it. In fact, on the rare occasions where I miss a meditation session, and sometimes when I was traveling, that was the case, I feel it. I mean, I feel almost, I might not get a headache, but I'll feel stress. I won't feel good. So as, what was it? Robert Glazer, I think, referred to positive addictions that are positive for you. And meditation is definitely one for me, as is exercise. Those are positive addictions that I'm glad to be addicted to those too.
I think it really makes sense because when I look at your work, what you produce, together with Dr. Higgins, who is unfortunately not with us anymore, then it makes really sense because we are so clear and you really need that in to write effectively. You didn't have the same technology for that a lot of people now have in order to write. You didn't really get down. Even if, so I guess that's really it shows a lot, but it
Yeah.
also shows about you yours. That is really powerful. But I just want to quickly go what you said how exercising is for you, but also of course, and even more so meditation. Why do you think it is such a challenge for today's generation, especially young people, to actually
take it seriously and get the exercise in order to fully develop. Whether you are an adolescent or an adult, it's just so important, right? Let alone meditation. I mean, that's something different, of course, but it's even worse, right? Because now everything is just so immediate reward, right? With the technology, social media, right? So why do you think is that? And how can we somehow mediate that and help people to get back?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have a good answer for that in terms of why um, the population in general and young people in particular, some of whom at least may not value exercise, much less meditation. Um, I don't know. It worries me. I can tell you in the U.S. there's a huge epidemic of childhood and adolescent obesity. People are unhealthily overweight in our country, and I've seen it elsewhere in the world. Um, I think it's due to a lot of factors: fast food, engineered food that tastes good because it's salty, sweet, fats, but aren't is not good for the body. I think stress, from the things I've read, is that when people are under stress, they'll often eat as a way of ameliorating the stress or comfort food, if you will.
Yeah.
And lack of exercise, of course, contributes to such. And we know the health effects of obesity or lack of exercise are deleterious. Um, I don't have an answer for it. I know my own kids. I encourage them to go into swimming because that was my main sport, and they were both excellent swimmers. And my older daughter got into triathlons and then became a CrossFit instructor. And my younger daughter likewise continued to swim and run half marathons. So both of them are very health oriented, even now as they're approaching 40. But I have seen many other young people that aren't. On the meditation side, my dream would be that meditation type practices could actually be taught in schools because I think it could be enormously helpful and enhance learning. And I'll say a little bit more about that if you want. But I'm not optimistic that that's going to happen because at least in my country, people often associate meditation with some new age religion or some spiritual thing or something that might be against their beliefs, or that it's some brainwashing that you're imposing on others. And so I'm sad to say that, but I don't think it will ever happen that it's seen as a valuable adjunct to education, even though we do have physical education, which is purportedly promoting, exercise. Um, but I, I'm always careful not to proselytize. I don't like people telling me what I should do or what I should believe. So in terms of my meditation practice, I'm pretty private about it. When people are interested, and this is an opportunity for me, I will gladly talk about it, and I could talk about it for hours. But I think it's something that people hopefully can discover on their own. And when they need it, like in my case, I needed something and it came along at the right time and it became then a habit.
So let's dive into it. Like, tell us a little bit how you actually do it, and if someone is listening and doesn't really know, you know, some start to really to get it going. Because what I often see, and I have friends, I love them so much, but then I see them all the time. They all of a sudden they start going to the gym again, break an hour or whatever. And then I always knew that after a week or two, it stops again because it's just too much, right? And
Right.
if you go to the gym, let's say 10 minutes to the gym, out, or when you come back, it's like, yeah, so, so much ultimate to excuse yourself not going to the gym. true. It's what I always tell the people that, just something, just get up in the morning and do something like 5 push-ups, whatever, like just start small, but something not skip, but it's for yourself. But if you say like, well, now I start, it's like I started like years to really start eating organic food stuff. You know, I was like, I had
Right.
a private coach who really told me to start small. Still have at least 2 days cheating days. Saturday, Sunday, you can eat whatever you want, fresh, whatever. And so it really, and it's a thing. Healthy, and I in Costa Rica, literally where I live, I can actually pick those from. So every day I have at least 2 to 3, fresh fruit every single day. It's mind blowing, right? So please walk us through this process, how someone start, and please give us the insight of how you think it's like your vision.
Well, I'll talk about both the physical and the mental side. Let's start with physical and exercise. I completely agree with what you just said. One of my mantras for any kind of change, and coincidentally, I did a 2-hour webinar today for an independent school that wants to use some of the ideas of understanding by design to upgrade its school curriculum. And I laid out a vision and a framework for them to do so. But I told them, look, this is long term work. This is 2 or 3 years. And so my mantra for them, but more generally for anyone who wants to initiate some change in their life, and let's say take exercise as an example, is 3 parts. Think big, set a goal that you want to achieve over time. It might be by the end of the year or in 3 years. So have a goal that's specific, one that you can assess or measure, and put it out there. In fact, I say write it down and put it on your mirror, for God's sakes. Uh, that's part one. Part two is, to your point, start small. And the third part is go for an early win. An early win means you're going to try something at the start that's easy and and doable, and that you're going to be likely to continue. Don't say I'm going to go to the gym for 2.5 hours Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Say I'm going to do 10 push-ups every morning, or the equivalent. Right? Start small, but track your progress. So when you realize, hey, now I can do 15 push-ups without as much effort as it when I first started to do it 5, because success breeds success. And then when you track your progress and see growth, you're more inclined to persist. Whereas if you try something that's too hard, you go to the gym for an hour and a half, you come back, and 3 days later, you're so sore you never want to do it again, you're going to give up. So, so think big, start small, go for early wins. Don't pick the toughest exercise, even if it's one you may need. Pick one that's comfortable, that you can track and get better at, and then expand to the more demanding ones. That's on the exercise front. And by the way, as much as possible, try to connect with one or more people who have the same goal and make it a collaborative endeavor. So you call each other up and say, okay, we're ready to go to the gym now. And you go, man, I want to take a nap. No, you got to come with me. Having social pressure or social camaraderie can really help. Now, let me talk on the meditation side. Um, Clearly, there are different um, traditions of meditation. There's Zen Buddhism. There's the Japanese of we're gonna stare at a candle. There's a mindfulness, and a whole lot of people are doing mindfulness practices. Mine was from an Indian tradition that involves a mantra. But here's the commonality among those different traditions. Each of them is using some focusing mechanism to focus the mind and to try to turn off the noise or the chatter. So whether you're staring at a candle flame and trying to block out other thoughts, or in my case, whether you're repeating a mantra mentally, or you're focusing just on, your serve and pickleball, you're trying to block out too much extraneous thoughts or actions. Um, One of the common elements, also, at least in the meditation I do, is breathing. So someone who might want to get started with meditation, to me, a start small action would be sit down in a comfortable place, shut off noise, the music and television and computer, and breathe. Breathe deeply, go all the way down to your chest. There's a technique called pranayama breathing in India where you breathe in through one nostril, exhale through the other, eyes closed, just concentrate on your breath. Do that for 5 minutes and you will feel yourself relaxing. It's a great start and it's easy to do. And I might say, try it for 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the afternoon. Or if there's a chance during the day and you can take a break, just do it. And just do that for a month or two and just experience it. Later on, you might take a course or get an online video and learn a more specific technique in one or whatever tradition you choose. I took a course and then I've read a fair amount about meditation, but the most important thing is just doing it. A couple other points, if I may. Someone gave me what I thought was a really helpful analogy for the benefits of meditation. They said, when you're first starting, even just doing a simple breathing kind of exercise, you might feel some relaxation, but it's very subtle. And you go back into your daily life and everything gets hectic again. But he said, over time, it's gonna be like a spider web, a very thin, almost transparent line, but it's there. And when the light's right, you can actually see it. But he said, think about over time, that spider web connects to a blade of grass. And so now you have something that's a little more tangible, a little more solid. And that blade of grass intersects with other blades of grass. And before you know it, you have a string. And over time, you have a rope. And over time, you have a steel cable. And that's what I've experienced in meditation over several years. The impact, the effect grew very subtly, but over time, demonstrably. And it was really powerful. Now I get the effect of relaxation, calmness, clarity regularly, but it took a while for that to build up. A last point related to something you mentioned earlier. Um, in my high school and college days, and in my early professional life, I was not a good writer. I didn't like writing. I was not good at it. I didn't do it if I didn't have to. Uh, Moreover, I was not a good speaker. I wasn't comfortable talking to a group of more than 5 people, especially presenting something. Now, since those days, I've written 18 books, 60 articles, and I regularly, at least before COVID, spoke to large conferences. I spoke to 3,000 people on many occasions, large groups. I attribute my growth in writing and in speaking in large measure to the experiences I've had in my various jobs. I mean, you have to have content knowledge, right? But unquestionably for me, it's the mental clarity that was derived from my meditative practices that brought the clarity that helped me think through things. I mean, writing is thinking made manifest, right? So clear thinking translates to clear writing and also speaking and presenting. And, without sounding pompous or arrogant, over the years, people have said to me, "You're really clear." And I attribute that clarity in large measure to the the impact of a regular meditation practice. So again, a long answer, but hopefully an interesting one.
Yeah, this is really interesting because I mean, it's one thing as you say, yes, you more clear also in your thinking, right? But then two, it's a whole other level to put it down in writing. You know how it is beautiful. Yeah, ideas we never had, and we have like book. And ultimately, we try to start writing it at a whole different level, right? There's just different senses that are involved. So it's really something that, well, and you are the best example, needs certain practice in order to really get the result out. And this analogy with the spider that ultimately becomes like a steep pole, right? This is really powerful. That that also leads to, and I think you're the best example in this regard, to really continue satisfaction, happiness, health, and just a maturity which really translates authenticity. I think today, authenticity is really what we are really looking for. Because if someone is authentic, then somehow it gives us unconsciously some sort of this worthiness and trustworthy, right? And trust is really the new currency in this day and age. You know, today, so many videos that are 100% made by AI. I always ask myself that I will never take a course which is 100% made by AI. You want to have authentic relationships that you actually can see the other in yourself, and vice versa, right?
Mhm.
Because this is what makes us really human. That's what makes us ultimately the meaning of ourselves and others, right? And so that is so important. So I just want to ask you another question because you were mentioning that yes, now these are hard in the sense that give chronological age. But I want to ask you this question because what I see in you really, you basically prove the opposite that you do not want to go back, in because what you tell me in just you are is that you have really fulfilled life, that there is something now that's just so powerful that you didn't have, when you were in your 30s. Even though it might be in some circumstances difficult, but just let us a little bit know how you feel about your age because 75 today, it's like really like almost middle age. It's like just the beginning, in my view, especially I consider you and how you do it.
Well, in one sense, it's hard for me to think of myself as 75 because, if you had asked me when I was 30, what would it be like to be 75? I would think I'll be in a home, in a wheelchair, with people feeding me. Um, but having said that, I feel um, wonderfully alert, alive. I'm physically active. I'm still working and thinking and mentally, I think, fairly sharp. Um, so I'm blessed in that regard. I think obviously your health is influenced by your genes, so maybe I've been blessed on that front. But also your lifestyle plays a huge role. So I feel blessed that I've been able to stay healthy, to do work that I think is meaningful, and to continue learning. And I think that's the secret. Use it or lose it.
I love that. It's just one of the last question because we are being actually, but I want to ask you, what did what's different in terms of yourself when it comes to nutrition? Because you are the United States, and you're highly exposed to delicious food, but that is not very healthy, fast food. And that's not an easy thing, actually, because obviously the environment conditions you is very powerful. Right? So, how does your nutrition look like? And how are you able to somehow keep yourself awake? Because it's very tempting, right? Right now, I have kind of this phase, a lot of chocolate like here in the store. They're actually selling some Swiss chocolate from, yeah, very famous Swiss chocolate, but not really brand. They actually sell it very cheap. Usually you don't get that. Yes, because it's not a brand. It's basically from the major grocery store in Switzerland, an in-house brand, right? I found it here, and every day I eat just for in the evening one chocolate. That's make I really when I feel like so like empty right now. It's too hard. So what do you do to stay awake from us?
Well, my wife and I both try to eat sensibly. We eat very little red meat, but we're not pure vegetarians. We eat seafood and chicken. We eat vegetables, have salads. I like making fruit smoothies, um, and so forth. So we try to eat both healthily, if that's the right word, but also portion sizes. We don't eat volumes. And one of the things when we go out to eat, especially in the US, the portion sizes are huge at restaurants. Um, Even if the food is somewhat healthy, there's just much more than I think a person needs to eat. Literally, last night we went to the movies with some friends and went out to eat afterward. And we brought home at least half of our meals, which we had for dinner tonight. So, eating what we know is good nutrition, fruits, vegetables, nuts, um, not too much red meat, and not too huge portion sizes. We, like you, enjoy sweets, but we eat them in moderation. By the way, when I'm in Costa Rica, I always feel healthier. And it's for what you mentioned, the mango, the papaya, the fresh fruits, the avocado, even the eggs are fresh. And I just love the fresh fruits, vegetables, wonderful seafood, etc. In your country. But eat healthy, eat in moderation, avoid the junk food, but give yourself a treat from time to time. Don't be too Spartan about it.
Last question, Mr. Tai. Where do you see yourself in the next few years? What project are in the making right now?
Well, if I look into the future, my first hope is that I'm above ground. So I'll say that. Um, I'm not in the ground, in other words. Um, a project, uh, I have um, a personal goal of writing the third edition of a book, Understanding by Design, that I originally co-wrote with Grant Wiggins. The first book was published in 1997, the second edition in 2005. And there's a lot that's happened since then, and it's really due for an upgrade. So I envision that as my last major writing project, although I do have another book that's kind of in process. So that's a big one. As I mentioned, I'm really into pickleball and I just want to get better. I want to improve. I get frustrated because most of the people I play with are either 10 to 30 years younger than me, and most of them are better. So I want to get better at that. So I have, a professional goal, a writing goal, and I have a personal physical goal of pickleball. And I just want to savor my grandchildren as they grow, and hopefully remain in good health.
Jay McTighe, thank you so much again for being on the show. It's such a blessing to have you and talk to you, and hopefully we can really continue this conversation because I can't really wait to see your personal. As you said, like, you doing 72, you made like 26 pull-ups, right? I mean, I did this actually, and I really, I mean, this is just outstanding. I really love that. So I can't wait to have you back, hopefully. And again, thank you so much. Deeply appreciate it. Okay,
That's my pleasure, and I look forward to the final product when you do the editing.
McTighe.
That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.the-ykm.com. Meant to make you grow.